If the intellectuals in the plays of Chekhov who spent all their time guessing what would happen in 20, 30, or 40 years had been told that in 40 years interrogation by torture would be practiced in Russia, that prisoners would have their skulls squeezed within iron rings, that a human being would be lowered into an acid bath, that they would be trussed up naked to be bitten by ants and bedbugs, that a ramrod heated over a Primus stove would be thrust up their anal canal, the secret brand, that a man's genitals would be slowly crushed beneath the toe of a jackboot, and that, in the luckiest possible circumstances, prisoners would be tortured by being kept from sleeping for a week, by thirst, and by being beaten to a bloody pulp. Not one of Chekhov's plays would have gotten to its end because all the heroes would have gone off to insane asylums. Yes, not only Chekhov's heroes, but what normal Russian at the beginning of the century, including any member of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party, could have believed, would have tolerated, such a slander against the bright future. What had been acceptable under Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich in the 17th century, what had already been regarded as barbarism under Peter the Great, what might have been used against 10 or 20 people in all during the time of Ben in the mid-18th century, what had already become totally impossible under Catherine the Great, was all being practiced during the flowering of the glorious 20th century, in a society based on socialist principles, and at a time when airplanes were flying and the radio and talking films had already appeared, not by one scoundrel alone in one secret place only, but by tens of thousands of specially trained human beasts standing over millions of defenseless victims.
But you're not saying in any way that she is a political pawn, political operative. You have sympathy for her. She is talking about a sexual assault. Is that correct?
I said all allegations should be taken seriously. Should listen to both sides. My family has no ill will toward her.
Thank you, sir. Do you wish that she never came forward?
Senator, I did not do this. The witness.
That's not my question, sir. Could you try to answer my question, sir? Do you wish she never came forward?
The witnesses who were there say it didn't happen.
Okay, sir. Do you wish she just remained silent then?
I wish the witnesses who were there say it didn't happen. All allegations should be taken seriously.
So even if it's in the final days before a vote, if someone has a credible allegation of experience that they held for a long time, that person should be allowed to come forward. And in fact, as she said, it was her civic duty. You're not questioning her sense of civic duty, are you?
She did come forward, and then it was.
I know you have a lot of political animus. You stated it very clearly towards my colleagues and I on this panel. What I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, you do not see her specifically as part of an orchestrated event. She is not a political pawn.
I don't know her, but I've also said that we bear no ill will toward her. She wanted confidentiality. This could have been handled.
And I understand, but she came forward. She took a great extent. Yeah. Your family has gone through hell. Her family has gone through hell. She sat here. She told her truth. Her truth.
It turns out that in that terrible year Andrei Yanuevich, one longs to blurt out, Jaguarevich, Vyshinsky, availing himself of the most flexible dialectics, of a sort nowadays not permitted either Soviet citizens or electronic calculators, since to them yes is yes and no is no, pointed out in a report which became famous in certain circles that it is never possible for mortal men to establish absolute truth, but relative truth only. He then proceeded to a further step, which jurists of the last 2,000 years had not been willing to take, that the truth established by interrogation and trial could not be absolute, but only, so to speak, relative. Therefore, when we sign a sentence ordering someone to be shot, we can never be absolutely certain, but only approximately, in view of certain hypotheses, and in a certain sense, that we are punishing a guilty person.
They think either that Blasey Ford is lying, she's just making this up, or they think she's mistaken, and that we have good reason to believe that she's mistaken. And here I feel people are just failing to think in a Bayesian way about prior probabilities and how we should update our sense of what's true based on current evidence, the way people are behaving, what we know about human nature and incentives. It doesn't seem so mysterious. Now, think about this claim that Blasey Ford might be lying. Not knowing much about a person, what's the probability that a woman would decide to destroy her life in this way by going public with a false accusation of this sort? What's the probability that a woman would decide to destroy the lives of two men and those of their family members by making this sort of false accusation? I've seen incredibly dumb tweets about her seeking a book deal and seeking to be famous, and this is an extraordinarily unlikely thing for a person to do. Granted, it could be made more likely if we knew more about her, if we knew that she was a fame-seeking sort of person. You sort of know it when you see it. But did Blasey Ford present in that way at all? She was the antithesis of that personality. She can't get away from those lights and cameras fast enough, so that the fame-seeking idea seems completely crazy to me. It just seems bizarre to believe that she would have been talking about this problem for at least 6 years, preparing the ground to unveil her allegations should Kavanaugh ever get nominated to the court. And again, this is based on some vindictiveness that has no explanation because she's lying, right? She's never been victimized by Kavanaugh in any way. And if she were going to lie about this, would she place a witness in the room who, also being accused, would seem likely to be hostile to her account? She put Mark Judge, his friend, in the room, and she's urged the FBI to speak with him. Is that the sort of lie you would tell if you were making this up? This does not have the hallmarks of a lie. Conversely, all of the probabilities and incentives are aligned in the other way for Kavanaugh. He appears to have spent most of high school and college as a drunk Christian jock asshole. There are not many people in public life who, when you scratch the surface on them, what you hear celebrated about them in their own yearbooks and even in books written for publication about them is how hammered they got as teenagers, continuously. Now, I say this as someone who drank way too much throughout high school and college. Virtually everyone was a binge drinker back then, but not everyone made it central to their identity the way Kavanaugh and his friends did. Given what we know about Kavanaugh, what's the prior probability that he behaved like a total jerk with girls? It's not small. This doesn't prove her allegation, but we know how drunk guys find themselves in those situations. And you add the frat house atmosphere to this guy's entire life, it only raises the probability on not especially low probability phenomenon. And then when you acknowledge that we have already noticed him lying in the aftermath of this allegation, without question, the guy has perjured himself. So then the question is, how likely is he to be lying about this? And what are the incentives for him to lie about this? Well, the incentives for him to lie about this are enormous. There's nothing mysterious about his behavior. Her behavior would be astonishing on many levels if she were making this up.
Thence arose the most practical conclusion, that it was useless to seek absolute evidence, for evidence is always relative, or unchallengeable witnesses, for they can say different things at different times. The proofs of guilt were relative, approximate, and the interrogator could find them, even when there was no evidence and no witness, without leaving his office. basing his conclusions not only on his own intellect but also on his party sensitivity, his moral forces, in other words, the superiority of someone who has slept well, has been well fed, and has not been beaten up, and on his character, that is, his willingness to apply cruelty. Of course, this formulation was much more elegant than Latz's instructions. But the essence of both was the same. In only one respect did Vyshinsky fail to be consistent and retreat from dialectical logic. For some reason, the executioner's bullet which he allowed was not relative but absolute.
For some of you.
Say a polygraph, it would all be over, Senator.
So why don't we dunk him in water and see if he floats?
Thus it was that the conclusions of advanced Soviet jurisprudence, proceeding in a spiral, returned to barbaric or medieval standards. Like medieval torturers, our interrogators, prosecutors, and judges agreed to accept the confession of the accused as the chief proof of guilt. Compare the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Nor shall any person be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Not be compelled. The same thing appears in the 17th century Bill of Rights.
But there's an idea that emerged in the West, and the idea is that the state is regulated by the ethic of the individual. And so that the individual has intrinsic value, and that value is predicated on the recognition of the individual's capacity to generate order out of chaos. And that's the identity with God that was implanted, so to speak, in human beings at the beginning of time, according to our founding, let's call them mythologies. There's something about that that's right. Now, if we lose that, we're going to suffer for it, man. We're going to suffer for it. And I've studied totalitarianism for a long time. I know what happens when things take a viciously communitarian twist. It is not pretty. And you know, people think our society is more, even the radical leftists who criticize it, think that our society is more robust and impervious to subversion and danger than it actually is. It's actually not. It's actually, we could lose it a hell of a lot more easily than we think.
Ja, men det är inte första gången vi börjar med president Donald Trump, men den här veckan så var det ytterligare ett rekord kanske. Det handlar om hans kommentar till Christine Blasey Ford som alltså vittnar och säger jag har blivit utsatt för sexuellt övergrepp. Så här svarade Donald Trump.
I had one beer. Well, do you think it was... Nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know.
Och där jublar folket åt detta. Det är lite svårsmält, eller vad säger ni?
Vi brukar sitta och säga att vi ska inte uttala oss innan en dom är fälld och vi brukar vara lite försiktiga. Och då är vi en liten nyhetspanel i Sverige. Och det här alltså det är helt oanständigt. Det är verkligen...
Men det är väl någonstans ett tecken på att... Jag vet inte, att USA får en sån president som lägger sig i sådana saker och yttrar sig på det sättet. Det är ju ett tecken på en stormakt i förfall. Det är något som inträffar här helt enkelt inför våra ögon. Fast vi ser det nu som en galning som håller på. Men det är något större som inträffar. Det är någon enorm förskjutning i hela systemet här som yttrar sig med det här som symptom.
Jag tänker så här att det är ju väldigt många saker som Trump har gjort som har förvånat oss och förvånat oss som svenskar tror jag. Därför att jag tror att vi har väldigt svårt att förstå den amerikanska kulturen och kontexten. Men jag tänker att det här ändå var ett lite oväntat ändå av honom. Därför att han hade ju tidigare sagt att det här vittnesmålet var ganska starkt och att han hade uttryckt vissa tvivel i alla fall kring Kavanaugh, sin kandidat till högsta domstolen. Eller han hade i alla fall sagt vi får vänta och se och sådär. Så att om han hade sagt så här, jag står bakom honom i alla läger, då hade det hade liksom varit väntat, för det hade liksom varit väntat till hans machoroll. Men här gör han ju liksom någonting som också handlar om hans väljare. Många av hans kvinnliga väljare har ju säkerligen liksom varit utsatta för såna här saker under sina tonår eller sexuella trakasserier. Så någonstans, tidigare har det ju varit en konflikt mellan liksom folk och elit eller vad man ska säga, med när han har kritiserat New York Times för fake news och så vidare. Men här är det ju liksom många av dem som har röstat på honom som har varit med om samma sak. Så därför så tycker jag att det var märkligt även ur ett Trumps-perspektiv att han gick på den här linjen.
Men jag satt och funderade på det här med själva liksom övergrepp, berättelserna och liksom oaktat skuld, oaktat förtal, håller vi på liksom att tappa bort berättelserna, att de blir bara någon slags redskap i en pågående såpa, som medial såpa, förstår ni vad jag menar?
Han sa ju samma dag så sa han ju att unga män behöver vara rädda, och det här är en tid när män blir attackerade, sa han inte, men att män hamnar på liksom den svarande sidan och att de behöver vara försiktiga. Och alltså, jag tycker han har en bra analys, att det är någonting annat som händer. Alltså, han lyfter upp en konflikt som jag inte tror han tjänar på. Det i ärlighetens namn att när Trump och män som Trump de ska vara väldigt tacksamma att kvinnor inte kräver revansch utan bara jämställdhet. Det hade varit betydligt jobbigare, och då hade det varit jobbigt.
Vad som blir uppenbart i det här fallet också är ju, eftersom så många såg förhöret med henne. Hon sa ju inte så där.
Nej, och sen
hon var ju väldigt trovärdig och tydlig.
Var det ju väldigt många som tyckte just det här, att hon var väldigt trovärdig och tydlig. Och att hon säger att det som driver henne är liksom hennes förtvivlan inför att hon ser att Kavanaugh ska liksom in i detta fina ämbete. Och det är någon samvetsgrannhet och någon lojalitet mot nationen. Det är inte de här porrstjärnorna som ser att här kan jag få 2 miljoner i skadestånd. Utan det finns någon sån vilja. Och New York Times har ju en podd som heter The Daily. Och där har de ju också nu gått igenom det här med väldigt många av hans gamla som har hört av sig, som har sagt så här, vi har inget ont med honom, men när vi bara ser honom blåljuga om detta med hur han aldrig har varit berusad, han var full jämt och sådana saker. Så att det är någon samvete, man kan inte ljuga så mycket och sen så bli domare i högsta domstolen.
Men sen är det en sak som jag tycker vi kunde ta chans att diskutera när det kommer upp, det är det här egendomliga systemet att högsta domstolen har en sån oerhörd betydelse i amerikanska politiska systemet. En författningsdomstol som står över demokratin i vissa avseenden. Och det där diskuteras ju aldrig. Det är så gjort för att det ska bli personstrider och sånt som är egentligen helt andra strider också. Och det tycker jag, men vi ska vara rädda för att ha ett sånt.
Det är ingen som delar min liksom diffusa oro för att just själva grundproblemet försvinner i det här spelet, och det handlar ju faktiskt både där och här hemma möjligen.
Ja, du menar berättelsernas egen
absolut.
Kraft? Ja, men
det handlar om sexuella övergrepp.
Ja, men så är
det är ett stort problem.
Ja, nej, men herregud, alltså, det är hela tiden så att det där ligger som ett konstant problem, permanent hela tiden, och då borde väl alla berättelser som uttrycks med en sån styrka som du gjorde här tas på allvar. Så är det.
Alltså, hon var ju den sansade i jämförelse med honom. Han var ju den hysteriska. Men man ser också det här med hur kvinnor respektive män bemöts när de uttrycker känslor. Så är det, nu har han tydligen bett om ursäkt för att han blev så oerhört emotionell i förhöret av honom. Men ja, nej. Men sen jag tycker bara, får bara säga en sak. Jag tycker bara att det här att jag tycker att när han har slagit uppåt på något sätt, när han har pratat om Rocketman och om Nordkoreas ledare och sådär och varit fraktfull mot dem, då är det en sak. Men här på något sätt så slår han ju liksom på alla kvinnor som har varit utsatta för detta. Och så han framstår ju mer som en mobbare. Som en översittare än som den liksom underdog han försöker vara.
Ja, det är ju så klart. Ja, vi byter ämne.
Nor was it an unusual method to starve the prisoner into confession. Actually, the starvation technique, like interrogation at night, was an integral element in the entire system of coercion. The miserly prison bread ration, amounting to 10.5 ounces in the peacetime year of 1933, and to 1 pound in 1945 in the Lubyanka, and permitting or prohibiting food parcels from one's family and access to the commissary, were universally applied to everyone. But there was also the technique of intensified hunger. For example, Cholpanayev was kept for a month on 3.5 ounces of bread, after which, when he had just been brought in from the pit, the interrogator Sokol placed in front of him a pot of thick borscht, and half a loaf of white bread sliced diagonally. What does it matter, one might ask, how it was sliced? But Cholpanayev even today will insist that it was really sliced very attractively. However, he was not given a thing to eat. How ancient it all is, how medieval, how primitive. The only thing new about it was that it was applied in a socialist society. Others, too, tell about such tricks. They were often dried. But we are going to cite another case involving Chebotayev because it combined so many methods. They put him in the interrogator's office for 72 hours, and the only thing he was allowed was to be taken to the toilet. For the rest, they allowed him neither food nor drink, even though there was water in a carafe right next to him. Nor was he permitted to sleep. Throughout there were 3 interrogators in the office, working in shifts. One kept writing something, silently, without disturbing the prisoner. The second slept on the sofa, and the third walked around the room, and as soon as Chebotayev fell asleep, beat him instantly. Then they switched roles. Maybe they themselves were being punished for failure to deliver, and then, all of a sudden, they brought Chebotayev a meal. Fat Ukrainian borscht, a chop, fried potatoes, and red wine in a crystal carafe. But because Chebotayev had had an aversion to alcohol all his life, he refused to drink the wine, and the interrogator couldn't go too far in forcing him to, because that would have spoiled the whole game. After he had eaten, they said to him, "Now here's what you have testified to in the presence of 2 witnesses. Sign here." In other words, he was to sign what had been silently composed by one interrogator in the presence of another, who had been asleep, and a third, who had been actively working. On the very first page, Chebotayev learned he had been on intimate terms with all the leading Japanese generals and that he had received espionage assignments from all of them. He began to cross out whole pages. They beat him up and threw him out. Blaginin, another Chinese Eastern Railroad man, arrested with him, was put through the same thing, but he drank the wine and, in a state of pleasant intoxication, signed the confession, and was shot. Even one tiny glass can have an enormous effect on a famished man, and that was a whole carafe.
Dr. Ford has described you as being intoxicated at a party.
He authored a book titled Wasted, Tales of a Gen X Drunk. He references a Bart Kavanaugh vomiting in someone's car during beach week and then passing out. Is that you that he's talking about?
What do you consider to be too many beers?
In your written testimony, you said sometimes you had too many drinks. Was there ever a time when you drank so much that you couldn't remember what happened or part of what happened the night before?
In high school, after drinking, did you ever wake up in a different location than you remembered, passing out or going to sleep?
Should we draw any conclusion that a loss of recollection associated with alcohol was involved in you not knowing who won the games that you attended?
No. First of all, the Georgetown Louisville was watching it on TV, a party, and
that's not inconsistent with drinking and not remembering what happened.
I'm aware.
When you talked to Fox News the other night, you said that there were times in high school when people might have had too many beers on occasion. Does that include you?
So most people have done some drinking in high school and college, and many people even struggle with alcoholism and binge drinking. My own dad struggled with alcoholism most of his life, and he got in trouble for it, and there were consequences.
Have you ever passed out from drinking?
You have said here and other places that you never drank so much that you didn't remember what happened. But yet, we have heard, not under oath, but we have heard your college roommate say that you did drink frequently. These are in news reports, that you would sometimes be belligerent. Another classmate said it's not credible for you to say you didn't have memory lapses. So drinking is one thing.
Did you consume alcohol during your high school years?
Yes, we drank beer. My friends and I, the boys and girls. Yes, we drank beer. I liked beer. Still like beer.
And red wine in a crystal carafe.
The genius of the American Constitution is not, if you ask the American people, you know, what about the Constitution? What do you like about it? And they'll say, freedom of speech, no unreasonable searches and seizures, freedom of religion, you know, the provisions of the Bill of Rights. Now, the Bill of Rights is a great thing, but it's really the fruit of the Constitution and not the roots of it. Right. Because, you know, every dictator in the world has a Bill of Rights today, and you wouldn't want to live in most of those countries. What makes ours a reality rather than just words on paper is what when I teach, I call the real Constitution. That when you talk about a constitution, it means a structure. Somebody has a sound constitution. That was the document before it was amended, and that set up the institutions of the country. And most Americans don't realize how different we are from the rest of the world. How few countries have a separately elected president rather than a creature of the parliament. You realize how much easier it is to get legislation through when the president, if the president were the creature of Congress? Very few countries of the world have two separate houses of the legislature that are independently elected by different methods, have their own leaders, their own agendas and so forth, are sometimes controlled by different parties. Very few countries of the world have that. And on top of it all, very few have the federalism that we have, so that in fact most of our laws are not federal laws. And in fact this court is not the most important court in the day-to-day life of the average American citizen, because federal law, including constitutional law, is a small portion of what governs the day-to-day life of Americans. That's the stuff that Americans should realize, what a phenomenal piece of work the Constitution was.
I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh
Mr. Chairman.
to serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed.
Regular order, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman,
I
with this
extend
hearing.
a very warm
We
welcome
have not
to
been
Judge
given
Kavanaugh,
an opportunity to have a meaningful
his wife,
hearing on
Ashley.
this nominee.
Their two daughters.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleague Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000
clerks
documents that we haven't
and
been able
everyone else joining
to review
us
last
today.
night, and we believe this hearing should
I
be
know
postponed.
this is an exciting day for all of you here, and you're rightly proud
Mr. Chairman,
of
if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
the American people.
Mr. Chairman, I move
get
to adjourn.
hear directly from Judge Kavanaugh later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. Mr. Chairman, we have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise. Mr. Chairman, regular order is called for, which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms. Well, and Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.